Hello everyone, this is part 51 of What If Naruto Was the Devil Ninja, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. With a wave of his hand, Naruto wandered into the entrance hall and up to the door. He felt the cold aura seeping through the house even before he reached the entrance. Staring at the door with a frown, he debated the merits of pretending they weren't there, but he already knew the time for feigning ignorance had long since passed. He opened the door. Just as he expected, Elmenhild and her two bodyguards stood just outside of the entrance. It wasn't quite night yet. The evening sun was going down, mostly hidden behind the mountains, but it was still out and painting the sky in varying hues. Elmenhild was using an umbrella to shield herself from the sun. He hadn't realized vampires could do that. Upon seeing who had answered the door, a look of disgust crossed the vampire's face, though she masked it quickly enough with a pleasant smile. Good evening, Naruto Uzumaki. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I wish to speak with Lady Rias. Is she in? Sorry, but we don't accept solicitors, Naruto said before slamming the door shut. Don't close the door on me, Elmenhild shouted. Naruto opened the door again and glared at the girl. Oh, right, I remember you. Sorry, I thought you were one of those door-to-door salesmen or something. You're lying, Elmenhild fumed as she glared daggers at him. Don't think I can't tell when someone is lying to me. So I was, Naruto readily agreed. The truth is, I simply don't want to invite you into my house. Who knows what kind of germs you might bring into the house? Just what kind of creatures do you think vampires are? Demanded Elmenhild, crossing her arms. I'll have you know that I bathe regularly and am free of germs. Those weren't the kind of germs I'm talking about, Naruto muttered, but then he sighed. Well, anyway, I guess that's enough teasing you. You're here to speak to Rias, right? Come on in. Elmenhild became off-kilter at the sudden shift in conversation. She blinked rapidly several times as if she couldn't decide whether to enter his house or not, but then, after a moment, she took a deep breath and stepped inside. Excuse me, she mumbled as she and her bodyguards walked into the entrance. Naruto began walking out of the hall, forcing Elmenhild to follow him. She only just managed to slip out of her shoes and hurried after him. He led Elmenhild into the living room, where it seemed everyone had gathered to watch heavens feel. The couch that Rias was sitting on had become packed. Irina, Rosweiss, Koneko, and Office were sitting together with her, but none of them seemed to mind how they looked like sardines packed together. On the other couch was Issei, Gasper, Zenevia, Rainier, and Kiba. Naruto wondered where Akino was, but then he heard her, Yufufufu, laughter in the kitchen, so he imagined she was with Ravel and Asia. Naruto, who was at the door. Rias didn't turn to him right away, eyes locked onto the screen, which just went to show Naruto where this woman's priorities were right now. Elmenhild has come to speak with us, Naruto said. I hope you don't mind that I let her in. Huh, Elmenhild, huh. I see, Rias murmured, still watching the movie. It looked like Sakura was becoming jealous of how Rin was getting closer to Shiro. He'd always known that woman was a crazy yandere. That was why Rin Tosaka was best girl. Rias often argued with him, stating that Sakura was best girl, but he understood a universal truth about anime that she didn't. Tsundere was better than yandere. However, several seconds after those words left her mouth, Rias and everyone else finally realized what he'd said and looked over at him. Only now did they realize that he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was the vampire from several evenings ago. Good day, Rias Gray? No, I mean, good evening, Lady Rias. Elmenhild curtsied to her. The action was much more respectful now than it was back then. I have come because I would like to renegotiate with you. My previous behavior it was unbecoming of me. Unlike last time, there was none of the haughtiness in Elmenhild's voice. Perhaps she had come to realize that acting arrogant and rude would avail her nothing with this group. Without her haughty exterior, the girl seemed a lot more down to earth than she had before. It also confirmed Naruto's belief that the Carmilla faction needed Gasper and couldn't afford to antagonize the three factions alliance. Rias looked at Elmenhild, then at her movie, and then she sighed. We were about to have dinner, Rias said. Why don't you join us? We can talk after everyone has eaten. Oh okay, Elmenhild said with a brief frown. And that was how a vampire joined them for a movie and dinner. Devil Ninja. While dinner wasn't necessarily awkward, it was a lot quieter with Elmenhild joining them. No one really felt like speaking because they were wary of the vampire and her two bodyguards. The only one who didn't act any differently was Naruto, who made it a point to be as talkative as possible. Theeshish delicious, he said around a mouthful of pasta. Don't talk with your mouth full, Rias said with a sigh. Ravel just giggled. I'm glad you like it. Naruto swallowed the food in his mouth. I love it. You're getting a lot better at cooking dinners. I'm really impressed. Thank you. Ravel's cheeks turned pink as her smile widened. While Ravel and Naruto had a good atmosphere going between them, Koneko glared at the two like they'd committed a crime against her. Conversations like this was something specific between these two. Koneko, who could not cook to save her life and didn't care enough to learn, would never get to hear Naruto's compliments directed at her. Nya ha ha. Are you jealous, Shiron? I'm not jealous. Koneko huffed and looked away from Naruto and Ravel as they continued to gaze into each other's eyes. She glared at the black cat next to her, but Kuroka merely smiled like a naughty kitten who was unrepentant after being caught eating catnip. Because she wanted to keep an eye on her, Rias had Elmenhild sit right next to her during dinner, which meant she sadly couldn't pay attention to Naruto. She kept a constant stream of polite dialogue going with Elmenhild, playing the political game. That was something she'd not done during their first meeting. She had been so nervous about meeting with the vampires that she'd nearly put herself in a disadvantageous situation. If Naruto had not stepped in, there was no telling what would have happened. How do you like your meal? Asked Rias. It's not bad, Elmenhild admitted with a tentative expression. She twirled more pasta on her fork and placed it in her mouth. From the way her expression changed from uncertain to blissful, Rias knew the woman was not being quite honest with herself. The meal they were having today was not traditional Japanese cuisine but a Japanese out of Italian fusion. Thick spaghetti noodles had been used instead of ramen, udon, or some other manner of Japanese noodles. The spaghetti was lightly seasoned with olive oil, pepper, and shredded Parmesan cheese. There was also a dipping bowl filled with a tonkatsu-based cheese broth that they could dip their spaghetti into. The cheese inside of broth was freshly grated Gouda. Last among the dishes was the cheese-topped onigiri. Once Rias ate her fill, she smiled at Elmenhild. Well, shall we adjourn to the living room? We can discuss whatever you came here for in there. If she was being honest with herself, Rias really didn't want to speak with this woman, who had interrupted her attempt at watching Heaven's Feel, Lost Butterfly. However, she was still the heiress to the House of Gremory and the little sister of Amao. She could not let her personal feelings get the best of her. The living room was not really the best place to hold a meeting with a diplomat, but she didn't want to let this woman deeper into her house. She didn't trust her, so they sat on a pair of chairs with a table in between them. It was off to the side, away from the television. Elmenhild's two bodyguards stood behind her, but Rias did not have her entire peerage with her for this, just Naruto and Issei. They were her two strongest pieces. If those bodyguards tried anything, she didn't doubt these two could take care of them. Before long, Akano walked in pushing a cart with a tea set on it. She served Rias and Elmenhild tea before quietly slipping out through a door on the other side of the room. Issei's eyes trailed after her, but he soon focused on the meeting. I hope dinner was to your satisfaction, Rias said with a smile. It was fine, Elmenhild said as she stared at the tea with a frown. Is everything okay? Asked Rias. Everything is fine. However, I would like to get to the point of my visit now. Rias felt a small bit of satisfaction when she realized the one now pressed with a desire to get this meeting going was Elmenhild. During their first meeting, it had been Rias who was pushing to get the meeting out of the way, which had put her at a disadvantage. Now it was this little vampire who wanted to begin quickly. While the person who strikes first in combat usually holds the advantage, that was not always the case in politics. Timing was everything. Of course. I assume you are here for the same reason you were last time. Rias grabbed her cup and took a sip of tea, allowing the gentle fragrance and slightly bitter taste to warm her body. She set the cup back down with a sigh. That's right. Elmenhild nodded before finally taking a sip of her tea. She sighed after setting it down. I was a little presumptuous last time. Please accept my apologies. Rias could well imagine how difficult it was for this girl to apologize like this. Vampires were a proud race, prouder even than devils. For her to apologize meant she had been backed so far into a corner this was the only thing she could do to get out of it. Elmenhild would have likely never done such a thing if her Carmilla faction didn't need Gasper. I accept your apology, Rias said with a magnanimous nod. I have also had a chance to consider your words, and I have decided that I wouldn't mind lending you Gasper's power. Ah, really? Elmenhild looked shocked, but she also couldn't hide the hope in her eyes. Rias nodded as the smile on her face widened. However, I have a few stipulations. I hope you can agree to them. The hope left Elmenhild's eyes and was replaced with wariness. What are they? Don't worry. They aren't by any means difficult to accomplish, Rias assured the girl with a kind smile. I'm sure you know about us Grimoires. We all care very much for our servants. Gasper is my cute little servant, and I'm not necessarily comfortable sending him into what sounds like a war zone by himself. That is why, before I lend him to you, I would like to travel to the vampire's territory and assess the situation for myself. Once I'm certain Gasper will not be in danger, I will call for him. Elmenhild bit her lower lip, her fang poking out of her mouth. She shifted in her seat as though trying to get comfortable. But if you did that, you needn't worry. Rias raised a hand to stop the girl from continuing. I promise not to interfere with the vampire's conflict. I merely wish to travel there and assess the situation. I would also like to have a meeting with the House of Vladi. The House of Vladi. Elmenhild was unable to stop herself from standing up, her eyes wide in shock. But they are with the Teepa's faction. I am aware of that, Rias said. However, the House of Vladi is Gasper's old home. Out of all the vampire families, they are the ones who worry me the most. I'm afraid of whether or not my Gasper can handle being in their presence, so I would like to meet with them. I'd like to at least try and get him to back off and agree not to meet with my servant. At these words, Elmenhild became furious. Her eyes narrowed into a glare. Do you really think they will agree to that? Rias was not intimidated by this girl and her glare. She remained calm as she stared at Elmenhild. Whether or not they agree to it is no matter. I merely wish to make the attempt. These are my 2 stipulations for letting you borrow Gasper's power. You may take them or leave them. Rias wondered how this girl would feel if she knew Rias had always intended to let Gasper travel to the vampire's territory, regardless of this meeting's outcome. Her servant wanted to return and help Valerie. Rias could not go against his desires. At the same time, she would not be a very good master if she couldn't at least get some benefits from a meeting with Elmenhild before letting her servant go off into danger. That is, Elmenhild didn't look anything like a vampire noble right now. She appeared more like a little girl. However, perhaps owing to her upbringing, she managed to recover quickly and sat back down. I will agree to your request, provided you agree to one of mine. You wish me to bring Lord Azazel, right? Asked Rias. Elmenhild looked startled at having her condition revealed. That's right. As you know, Lord Azazel is an expert when it comes to anything involving the sacred gears. We wish to make use of his knowledge. Rias nodded. She had already known about all this thanks to the conversation with Azazel after the first meeting. I do not have a problem with this, Rias said. In fact, I am sure Lord Azazel is already preparing to leave for the vampire's territory even as we speak. Is that so? Elmenhild looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she just got played or not, but her stipulation had been met, so she had no real reason to complain. Now that the meeting had ended, Elmenhild left with her 2 bodyguards. She said she would get in contact with Rias in a few days once the departure plans were prepared. The vampire's territory was in Europe, so they would need to prepare a plane. Knowing the vampires as she did, Rias was certain they would have their own private jet, but if not, Rias could procure one of the House of Grimoires' private jets. Once the vampires were gone, Rias called all her servants back in, adjourning to the couch, where she sat with Naruto, Koneko, Ravel, Rosweiss, Office, and Irina. It was a bit cramped with 6 people, but fortunately Koneko and Office were able to fit on Naruto's lap, much to Ravel's displeasure. So we'll be going to the vampire's territory soon, Kiba said from where he leaned against the armrest of Isai's couch. His arms were crossed. It looks like you got your wish. That's right. Rias nodded. However, there are still a few days before we leave. I have a few things I need to do before we leave. She paused and looked at Luffy, who stood behind Naruto. When the blonde girl tilted her head, Rias turned back to the others. I've received several invitations from various magicians who wish to offer a pact with all of you. While Naruto already has his own contracted magician, the rest of you do not. It would be a good idea to meet with these magicians and decide on one to form a pact with. To that end, I have scheduled a meeting with Mephisto Fields. Who is that? Asked Naruto. Isn't that Mephisto Guy Tannen's master? Asked Issei. Mephisto Fields is a devil from the Extra Demons, Luffy said. He's also the current chairman of the magician organization, Grauzalbera. Rias nodded. Mephisto Fields has been active since the previous 4 Ma'u were alive. Because of his strong belief in liberalism, he didn't get along with the previous Ma'u due to the domineering nature and attempts to order him around. He's also not very interested in the rating games, which is why Tannen has free reign to do whatever he wants. In either event, all of you will be meeting with him this weekend. I might be gone by then. If I am, Akeno will be in charge until I return. Everyone agreed with Rias' words, and the large group soon broke up into smaller groups. Issei was dragged off by Asia, Rainier, and Zenevia. Akeno went off on her own. Meanwhile, Naruto and Rias were finally able to sit down and watch Fate Out of Stay Night Heaven's Feel 2, Lost Butterfly with the other members of Naruto's harem. It was a good movie. Devil Ninja. Devil Ninja. Naruto woke up bright and early Saturday morning. It was a bit odd waking up with only Rias in his bed, but he remembered that Rias was leaving today, so the two of them had spent most of the night having s. Come to think of it, Naruto felt like he'd only just fallen asleep. How many times did we do it last night? Lying on his back, with Rias snuggled so firmly into his side it was as if she had melded with him, Naruto tried to recall just how much they had. Rias had been like a woman possessed. Even after he decided to stop because she had to leave tomorrow and needed some rest, she had continued to goad him on, bringing him back to full mast with her undeniably attitude, enthusiasm, and drop-s gorgeous body. He glanced at the clock. It was only 7 a.m. If he wasn't mistaken, they hadn't gone to bed until 3 a.m. So I only got 4 hours of sleep. F that noise, Naruto mumbled. He closed his eyes and was about to go back to sleep. Beep, 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 when the alarm clock went off. Rias groaned as she lifted her head from his chest. She blinked blearily at the clock, her somewhat red eyes narrowed, bags under her eyes, and then she groaned, held out her hand, and a magic circle appeared before it. Power coalesced around her hand. Dark energy erupted, causing the hairs on Naruto's arm to prickle. Ah, Rias, what are you? Boom. Time to get up, she muttered with a tired groan as she climbed off him and out of bed. Naruto would have followed her, but he was busy staring at the smoking and charred remains of their alarm clock. Did you really have to blow up the alarm clock? Asked Naruto. It was just doing its job. It annoyed me. Rias narrowed her tired eyes at the alarm clock. And I'm cranky. Isn't that your fault? Asked Naruto with a sigh. He wanted to go back to sleep, but that wasn't going to happen, so he crawled out of bed as he released a loud yawn. He wasn't wearing a single stch of clothing, but Naruto was not bothered by his or Rias-ness. Honestly, he was pretty set out right now. After how many times he'd see last night, he didn't think he could even get it up. Help me bathe, Rias said. Sure. After dressing in a set of bathrobes, they made their way into the bathroom and washed off quickly, then returned to the bedroom and got dressed. By the time they were finished, Naruto and Rias were a little more awake. That said, he would have personally liked a few more hours of sleep. Was this karma for having so much s? Karma thing sucked. Karma can suck my s, Naruto grumbled. Did you say something? Nope. Ravel and Akeno had already finished cooking breakfast by the time they entered the kitchen. Naruto sniffed the delicious air several times. From the sweet scent, it smelled like they had made French toast. Nobody was awake yet, but more people began arriving soon after he and Rias did, first Ise and his group, then Koneko, Office, Rosweiss, and Irina in that order. As everyone began sitting down, Ravel came over and poured Naruto and Rias a cup of coffee. You look awfully tired for someone who is leaving today. HMPH. Koneko snorted at Ravel's words. Tired. She looks satisfied to me. She looks like someone who had her brains fed out. D-, don't be so crass, Irina scolded the girl with a bright red blush. I am feeling incredibly satisfied, thank you very much, Rias said with a somewhat lackadaisical smile. It was a look Naruto had never seen on her before, but they did have a lot of S, last night, so it wasn't like he didn't understand. At the same time, perhaps because of her comment, it made her seem a lot more arrogant than she normally was. He was surely imagining things. Right. While Koneko huffed and began chowing down on her food, everyone looked at each other uncertainly before, as if communicating telepathically, they ignored what Rias said and began eating as well. Breakfast was finished soon. The coffee Ravel poured for Naruto helped him wake up. He was good to go by the time Azazel arrived with a car. It wasn't a limousine like Naruto was expecting, but a standard SUV with enough room to fit about 12 people, so just enough for their peerage plus Irina and Zenevia. Azazel was the one who drove them to the train station. Everyone hopped off and Naruto helped Rias carry her luggage. She only had one suitcase worth, which would have surprised most men because certain stereotypes made it out that women always needed several suitcases filled with an unnecessary amount of clothes, but Naruto was fortunately too genre-savvy to let himself be surprised, and Rias was too genre-savvy to let herself fall into typical cliches. That was what happened when someone watched enough anime. At least, that was what Naruto chose to believe. The train station was busy even at this early hour. Naruto had heard this time was when people commuted to work. There were many men and women dressed in business suits, chatting on their phones or reading the newspaper as they waited for the train. Naruto glanced at one person next to him, an older gentleman with slightly graying hair and a haggard expression on his face. Naruto hoped he would never become like that. You know, now that we're finally here, I find that I don't really want to leave, Rias admitted with a sigh. It can't be helped, right? Asked Naruto, shrugging. It's not like you can put this off. Yeah, I know, Rias muttered. Just let me complain right now. By the way, where are you meeting Elmenhild? The airport. As they spoke, Kiba and Azazel walked up to them. While Azazel seemed to blend in with the crowd thanks to his older appearance, the young and handsome Kiba drew the attention of several older women. The hearts in their eyes and the drool that could drown a fully grown adult was disturbing, but Kiba ignored those lustful stares like the pro he was. I'll be counting on you to protect Rias in my place, Naruto said as he held out his fist. Kiba grinned and bumped fists with him. Don't worry, I won't let anyone harm a single hair on Rias' head. You'd better not, or I'll be sure to make you'll be wishing for my Sennen Goroshi. What? Nothing. I'm pretty sure that wasn't nothing. In fact, I'm positive I just heard something frightening. Must be your imagination. Rias smiled as Naruto and Kiba joked to ease the tension. Their moment was interrupted, however, when the train they would be taking to the airport arrived. It was a bullet train, sleek and streamlined. Naruto remembered taking one to Kyoto. Looks like this is our ride. Azazel turned to Naruto and Rias. Better say your goodbyes now. There's no telling how long we'll be gone. Right. Rias turned to Naruto and didn't hesitate to throw her arms around him and plant a kiss on his mouth. Naruto had no choice but to grab her waist as he kissed back, letting Rias passionately kiss him in the middle of the train station. He was keenly aware of the eyes on him. It wasn't just the members from Rias' peerage. Several older men and women were giving them disapproving looks. Take care of yourself, Rias said as she pulled back. You too. Be careful, Naruto said. I will. With those parting words, Rias, Kiba, and Azazel stepped onto the train. Naruto watched the doors slide shut, then continued watching as the train began moving. It disappeared before long. I'm sure Rias will be fine. Rosweiss placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Kiba is quite strong. He will do a good job of protecting her. I know. Naruto stepped closer to Rosweiss and slid an arm around her waist. It was a testament to how used to his affection she'd become that Rosweiss only reacted by growing stiff. She used to squawk, blush, and then lecture him on propriety when he did this. As he continued to stare after the train even though it was gone, he wondered what sort of surprises the rest of this weekend had in store for them. Devil Ninja. With Rias gone, Akeno was placed in charge of the daily activities. Of course, she didn't have to do much since everyone already knew what was expected of them, but there were still important matters only she could take care of, like mediating the upcoming meeting with Mephisto. Getting a contracted mage was sort of an important ritual for devils. The mutually beneficial exchange between devils and magicians had become an important and fundamental aspect of their society. Naruto already had Luffy as his contracted magician, and he thought she did a wonderful job, though he hadn't needed her much. Luffy spent most of her time researching the Gremory family magic and the Bale family's powers of destruction, which Rias allowed her to study. From what Naruto understood, she was trying to replicate the powers of destruction with magic. Because the meeting with Mephisto was that day, everyone made their way to the occult research clubroom after training. They walked to Kuo Academy with plenty of time to spare and lounged in the clubroom until it was time for the meeting. Is it really that important to make a pact with a magician? Asked Zenevia. She was sitting on the couch with Issei, Asia, and Rainier. Her head was tilted, hand on her chin, expression thoughtful. It is very important, Luffy, standing behind Naruto as he sat on the other couch, said. She pointed her index finger into the air like a lecturer and continued. The relationship between devils and magicians is an old one that goes back to the age of Merlin. I didn't realize the relationship between devils and magicians went that far back, Irina said in surprise. She was sitting on Naruto's left, having been lucky enough to claim that spot for herself. Because of how important the relationship between us is, the magicians have always done the best to maintain a friendly relationship with the devils, Luffy said with a smile. In this day and age, it's not only a business venture, it is also a tradition that has been passed down for thousands of years. Okay, so forming a pact with a magician is important, Zenevia conceded her point. While the conversation between Luffy and Zenevia was happening, the others were either listening or doing their own thing. Koneko was eating manju as she sat on Naruto's lap. Ravel was sitting on his right, close enough that their thighs were touching. Rosweiss looked a little put out as she sat on Ravel's other side. She had wanted to sit next to him, but she'd been late because a meeting with the teachers held her up. As the conversation between the two wound to a close, a magic circle suddenly appeared on the floor. It looks like Mephisto-sama is about to show up for our meeting, Akeno said, clapping her hands as she walked over to the couches. She didn't sit, instead opting to stand with her hands clasped before her like a maid in waiting. Everyone, be sure to be on your best behavior. Don't do anything that would disgrace the House of Gremory. At those words, Koneko slid off Naruto's lap, which forced an irate Ravel to scoot away from him. However, she was unable to say anything because someone suddenly appeared within the magic circle. He was a man who looked around the same age as Azazel, but his hair was a mixture of red and blue, and it looked gelled. His left eye was blue, while his right was red, same as his hair. Naruto wondered if maybe he'd dyed his hair because of his heterochromia, but he digressed. Mephisto-sama. Akeno bowed. It is a pleasure to see you again. I apologize for Rias-sama's absence. An incident occurred and she was forced to head into the vampire's territory. Akeno, it's very nice to see you too. Mephisto wore an easy smile as he walked over to the group. You need not apologize. I heard all about what is happening with the vampires and how they tried to steal away one of Rias' servants. It was rather foolish of them, if you ask me, but I digress. Please allow me to introduce myself to everyone here. The man's gaze swept across the group. It paused for a moment, and Naruto thought he was looking at him, but then he realized that was not the case. Before Naruto could figure out what Mephisto was looking at, the older devil bowed low in a more European fashion. Good evening, everyone. It is nice to finally meet all of you. My name is Mephisto Fields. I am the current head of Grauzalbera. Thank you for agreeing to hold this meeting with me. So this was Mephisto Fields. He seemed like a likable sort. There was an easygoing atmosphere about him that felt almost deceptive, but he also gave Naruto a vibe similar to that of a Duke of Beelzebub, whom Naruto had met with many times because of how abnormal he was. Still wearing a smile, Mephisto waved his hand and a magic circle appeared before him. Naruto wasn't sure what to expect at the sudden use of magic, But then a chair suddenly appeared behind Mephisto, who sat down, placed his arms on the armrests, and crossed his left leg over his right. He was still wearing a smile as he said, "Now, why don't we get this meeting started?" Devil Ninja. Mephisto feels of the extra demons and the chairman of the Magicians Association didn't look like what Naruto had expected, but Naruto had also been expecting an old man with a beard, or maybe a young, silver-haired man who transformed a woman into a man so she could become the king of Britain, something like that. Anyway, Mephisto was nothing like he expected. "A lot of young magicians have put forth requests to become your contracted mages," Mephisto said with a small smile, completely at ease as he sat before them with the chair he had magicked into existence. "The Grimoire peerage has become extremely popular thanks to your excellent feats of strength and valor. I think Rias Grimoire's peerage is actually the most popular out of the entire Rookies 4. Rookies 4. Naruto could not help but tilt his head when he heard that TLE. It sounded a lot like the Rookie 9, which had been the TLE given to him, Sasuke, and the other Konoha genin who participated in the Chunin exams while they were still rookies. Was this something like that? You mean you don't know? Mephisto looked shocked that Naruto was unaware of this TLE, though he thought for sure the man was being condescending. With a smile, Mephisto explained the TLE. The Rookies 4 is the TLE that was recently given to the 4 young devils who made the biggest impact in the rating games, Syrah Ogbale, Sigvira Agares, Sona Citri, and Rias Grimoire. They are calling you the greatest generation of rookies in the history of the rating game, a group of promising young devils who have exceeded the levels and ranks afforded to people your age. You might not know this, but your generation is considered abnormal. The powers you all possess are far greater than any other group of immature devils in recent history. That's why they are calling Rias and her peers the Rookies 4. Now that Naruto was hearing it explained, he understood. It really was just like when Naruto and his group of inexperienced genin participated in the Chunin exams and shocked the entire ninja world. He wasn't surprised to see they had been given ortals. It seemed like human nature to give ortals to extraordinary people, though these people weren't human, they were devils, so maybe it was in a devil's nature. Well, whatever. He could think on that later. This is probably something you already know, but our factions are currently very weak, Mephisto continued. We have lost our chief god and the foremost to the war many years ago, which means faith in our factions have weakened. To make matters worse, we angels, devils, and fallen angels have been mass hated by the older mythologies for many centuries. Having taken away the believers, we have eradicated many other mythologies and religions, causing them to disappear from the annals of history. As Mephisto spoke, he locked eyes with Naruto. It was only thanks to you, Naruto Uzumaki, that our faction has managed to survive as much as it has. Thanks to me. Naruto pointed at himself. What did I do? Your power has shocked the entire world into paying more attention to us, Mephisto said, placing his hands on his knee as he bounced his leg up and down. When you fought against the entire Greek pantheon and held them off to rescue the alliance leaders, you convinced the greatest gods to join our alliance. They became terrified of you, especially that Zeus. Then when you traveled to Kyoto, you protected their little princess and rescued the yokai leader, further ingratiating our faction to others. Because of you, we are now allies with the Greek pantheon and the yokai of Kyoto. That is no small feat. Naruto honestly had no idea his actions had done all that, but he would admit the reason he didn't know about any of this was because he didn't care. His goal since coming to this world was never to gain fame and fortune. What he wanted was to be the strongest. It didn't matter to him if others acknowledged him like it did in his previous world. Speaking of, who is the strongest faction? Naruto suddenly asked. That would be the Hindu. Mephisto suddenly grew pensive, brows furrowing. They are considered the greatest faction in the entire world. Their followers are many, though they are mostly insular and don't have many followers beyond their borders. That said, the faith their followers have in them is far stronger than the faithful of any other religion out there. 4 of the gods, Indra, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, are ranked among the top 10 strongest beings in the world. All 4 of them have powers that rival if not exceed a Duke of Beelzebub and Syrex Lucifer. There is even a rumor that Shiva is powerful enough to fight against every leader in the 3 factions alliance and win. Naruto whistled in appreciation. He had known about the Hindu gods thanks to some things Rias told him, but he hadn't been aware of just how powerful they were. So if I want to become the strongest, I need to kick this Shiva's ass? Asked Naruto. Mephisto blinked. What? Shiva? I need to kick his ass to be called the strongest, right? Well, I suppose so, yes. He is the strongest among the top 10 strongest beings in the world. Shiva is the Hindu god of destruction, though Shiva does not much care for combat. He is much more interested in acquiring objects of interest and knowledge, Mephisto explained. Naruto wondered if he would ever meet this Shiva. He was really curious to know what kind of person the one TL the strongest in the world was. This conversation seems to have gotten off topic. Mephisto swirled his finger around and a magic circle appeared before them. Several hundred docents appeared from within the magic circle and landed on his lap, then floated in the air and flew over to Akeno, who caught the docents in her hands. These docents contain all the data on the magicians who have requested a pact with your peerage. Each docent not only tells you who they want to form a pact with, but it also explains their strengths and their weaknesses. I thought that would prove helpful to you in choosing. Oh, Mephisto's eyes flickered as though he'd remembered something. Because Naruto already has a contracted magician, I have removed all the docents pertaining to him. Hey, you are actually pretty fortunate. There were over 1,000 magicians requesting a pact with him. Naruto would not lie and say he wasn't shocked, but he was not about to let anyone know that. The stack of docents was so big it looked like a mountain in Akeno's hands. It looked heavy, but she carried him easily to the coffee table and set him down. When she did, the group gathered around the docents and stared at them. Naruto looked at the docent on top and realized it was like a profiler. There was a photo of the magician each docent was about, followed by information about the kind of magic they specialized in, their previous experience, and their households. It made Naruto think of a resume. There are so many, Issei muttered in shock. Are these really all the people who want to form pacts with us? Asia asked no one in particular. This isn't all of them, Mephisto admitted. There were a lot of magicians who wanted to form a pact with your group, but I weeded out the weaker ones. Since your group is exceptional, I wanted to only present the best of the bunch to you. All the magicians listed in these docents are at the top of their fields and should prove useful in one way or another. Because there were so many, Rosweiss began sorting the docents into smaller sections. It looked like she was sorting them by a combination of gender, age, and their specialized magic. First she divided them into male and female. Then she further divided them by their age. Finally, she looked at their specialized magic and divided them one more time. This resulted in nearly 40 stacks of 100 docents. So many resumes, Koneko murmured. It's like they're blue-collared workers hunting for a job. It's more like a pact hunt than a job hunt, Rosweiss corrected as she finished sorting all the docents. But I understand what you are getting at. I feel a lot like an employer at a big company going through resumes to see who I want to interview for a new position that just opened. Once all the docents were split, they discovered that each magician had requested to form a pact with a specific devil. Most of the docents were for Rias. It was obvious she would have the greatest amount of docents since she was a king and a high-class devil. She was also the heiress to the House of Gremory, which meant she had access to greater knowledge than anyone else. The person who had the second most requests was Rosweiss. It seems on top of researching their own branch of magic, they crave the wisdom I obtained from the Norse and information regarding Yggdrasil. Rosweiss explained to them why she was so popular. That made a lot of sense. Norse mythology was one of the central factions with the greatest knowledge for magic, so any magician worth their weight in wands would want to form a pact with someone from that faction. Rosweiss was also a Valkyrie, a half-god, so her place in the Norse hierarchy was not small. At the surprised sound, everyone turned to look at Asia, who was staring in shock at her large pile, which was actually the third largest among the docents. The stack was so big that it hid Asia from view. Why do I have so many people who want to form a pact with me? Are they really okay being with someone like me? She asked in a small voice. The poor girl looked intimidated and overwhelmed by the sheer volume of docents. Mephisto smiled at the girl and said, "Your healing ability is the biggest factor for why they want to form a pact with you. The power to heal has always been one of the most important facets of magic regardless of the era. It should not be strange that so many wish to form a pact with you and be blessed with the power of healing. They can gain more fame this way." Being able to heal others could be a great business venture, Naruto added. Anyone who has such a power could easily make a fortune in the medical business. Exactly, Mephisto said. Asia, Issei suddenly shouted, a nervous sweat forming on his brow. Let's choose your partner together. Oh okay, Asia said with a timid but relieved smile. Naruto shook his head and chuckled. Issei was becoming even more overprotective of Asia as time went on. While Rias, Rosweiss, and Asia got solicited the most, it wasn't like everyone else didn't have a lot of options to choose from. That said, among the remaining members of Rias' peerage, the ones who had the least amount of magicians wishing to form a pact with them were Koneko and Gasper. Koneko and Gasper didn't get solicited as much because they haven't been able to display the true strength yet, Mephisto admitted. I'm actually a little surprised Sekiruote didn't have as many magicians soliciting him, but I guess that is the difference between devils and mages. Magicians very much believe in propriety and status. Their value and reputation as a magician is more important to them than their own life, so they are not fans of anything that isn't seen as elegant. They must have thought Issei was too vulgar because of his perverted techniques. Well, I guess that is just the difference in our culture. Upon hearing Mephisto talk about how his techniques were too vulgar, Issei looked like he might start crying. Tears stung his eyes. Asia and Rainier, perhaps sensing his desolate emotions, patted his back, though Rainier also had to add a tsundere-esque comment. Stop looking so pathetic. It makes me look bad, Rainier said with a huff and a blush when Issei stared at her. In either event, these are all the docents you have received this time. If you see anyone who meets your standards, please contact us so we can conduct the ceremony, Mephisto continued. It sounded like these people were not the only magicians who wanted to form a pact with the group. Since there were far too many docents for them to go through right now, they decided to send them all to Naruto's house through a magic circle. During that time, Mephisto turned his attention to Ravel, who had been silent up to now. You are from the House of Phoenix, correct? Ah, why yes. My name is Ravel Phoenix, Ravel said, straightening in her seat. Mephisto rubbed his chin and studied the girl. I'm actually glad you are here. There is some information I believe is important to your clan, so could you please deliver this knowledge to your parents? What I have to say is pretty top secret, and I haven't had the time to deliver it myself. What information is that? Asked Ravel. It seems there is a group of stray magicians who have joined the Chaos Brigade. They have been getting into contact with any devils related to the House of Phoenix, Mephisto explained. They have been. Ravel looked surprised. Naruto walked over, sat down next to Ravel, and fixed Mephisto with a small frown. Can you explain what these stray magicians are after? Of course. Mephisto replied. You know how the Phoenix Tears have been getting passed around to the terrorists in secret, correct? Ravel nodded. I heard there were a group of black market distributors who were trading the Phoenix Tears in secret. However, the people responsible have already been dealt with. I was told the situation has gone back to normal. I'm afraid the situation is more complicated than that, Mephisto said. Now the black market is selling tears that aren't being produced by the House of Phoenix. What? It wasn't just Ravel who shouted in shock. Everyone had. After all, it was common knowledge that only someone from the House of Phoenix could produce Phoenix Tears. But if they are not genuine Phoenix Tears, doesn't that mean they're selling fakes? Asked Ravel. They shouldn't have any effect, right? Shaking his head, Mephisto said, like I said, the situation is complicated. These fake Phoenix Tears might not grant the same effect as real Phoenix Tears, but they are close enough to genuine ones that the difference is indistinguishable. They are being distributed in secret, but I managed to get my hands on a sample. Here. A small bottle appeared in Mephisto's hand. It looked a lot like the bottles the House of Phoenix stored their tears in. I don't know how they are able to make these yet, but Phoenix Tears that aren't produced by the House of Phoenix are being distributed to the remnants of the Chaos Brigade. What's more, we recently learned that the stray magicians are attempting to get into contact with members of the House of Phoenix, though we do not know why. I'm telling you this for two reasons. The first is that I'd like you to inform your family. The second is to warn you. Warn me? Asked Ravel. Yes. Mephisto used magic to make the vial of tears fly over to Ravel, who caught them in her delicate hands. I believe the stray magicians will target you sometime in the near future, so please be careful. Ravel's face became gloomy like storm clouds as she looked at the vial of fake phoenix tears in her hands. Naruto reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. He didn't know what she was thinking, but he knew she must have been confused by this new information. This matter was a lot bigger than Mephisto made it out to be. Phoenix tears were the House of Phoenix's greatest source of income. If someone could produce fakes that had the same effect, it could be a devastating blow to the House of Phoenix financially. The conversation between Rias Gremory's peerage and Mephisto soon ended. As the man left, Naruto observed all the people present, then looked at the now silent Ravel. It looked like they were going to be quite busy. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.